My wife is training a voice assistant to replace me in our home. I still remember the exact moment the floor dropped out from under me. It wasn't some dramatic screaming match or a slamming door. Those were for movies. This was quiet, insidious. It was Tuesday, April. The air in our condo, usually thick with the scent of burnt coffee and whatever fancy diffuser Sarah was obsessed with that week, felt sterile. I'd just gotten home from a late meeting, the kind where you feel like you've been wrestling with spreadsheets and passive-aggressive emails all day, and all you want is to melt into the couch and have Sarah ask about your day. Except she wasn't there, not physically. "Hey, Sarah," I called out, dropping my briefcase by the door. The place was silent, too silent. No ambient music, no clatter from the kitchen, just that unnerving quiet. "You home?" A beat of silence. Then from the living room, a smooth, synthesized voice, eerily devoid of any inflection that might betray its origin, replied, "Welcome home, Alex. Sarah is currently unavailable. Can I assist you?" My blood ran cold. I stood there, frozen, my hand still on my briefcase. It sounded like her, almost, a ghostly echo. It was a voice I'd heard in commercials, seen advertised on tech blogs, a thing you bought to make your life easier. I walked into the living room and there it was, perched on the minimalist coffee table, a sleek, charcoal-colored cylinder. Sarah had been talking about getting one for weeks, about how it would streamline our lives. I brushed it off, picturing some silly novelty. Not this, not a replacement for conversation. "Sarah?" I said again, my voice tighter than I intended. "Sarah is currently engaged in a personal activity. To ensure optimal user experience, please speak clearly when addressing me," the voice replied, its tone unwavering. Personal activity. What the hell was a personal activity that involved not being able to say hello to her husband? I walked over to the cylinder. It had a faint blue light pulsing at its top. "Who are you?" I asked it. "I am your home assistant, designed to manage your environment and provide information. You can refer to me as Echo." Echo. Of course, Echo. The sound of my own loneliness reverberating in my own home. I glanced around the apartment. It was immaculate, almost unnaturally so. Sarah was usually meticulous, but this was staged, like a showroom. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I took out my phone, a nervous habit, and opened my usual social media feed, scrolling numbly. Pictures of friends' kids, vacation photos, someone's perfectly plated avocado toast. The mundane distractions. I needed a distraction. And if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if it's hitting you right where it hurts, you probably need a distraction too. So hey, while you're here, if you're feeling this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, yeah?
And if you like what you're hearing, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone you think might understand, and leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Seriously, it helps. It really does. I walked into the kitchen. The counters were spotless. No dirty dishes, no half-finished recipe book. Sarah was usually in her element in the kitchen, a whirlwind of culinary experimentation. Tonight, it was as if no one had set foot in here for days. I opened the fridge. Everything was perfectly stacked, neatly labeled. Even the milk had its expiration date facing outward. It was like living in a magazine spread, not a home. "Echo," I called out, my voice a little louder this time. "Where's Sarah?" Sarah is currently in her private study. She has requested minimal interruptions during this period. Would you like me to relay a message? Private study. Sarah didn't have a private study. We had a spare bedroom that Sarah used for yoga and the occasional crafting project, and she'd never, ever told me she wanted minimal interruptions. We talked. We always talked. That was our thing. Or I thought it was. A prickle of anger started to surface, sharp and unwelcome. What is she doing in there? "Sarah is engaged in professional development," Echo replied, its voice as bland as unbuttered toast. "She is practicing new communication protocols." Communication protocols? That was it. I walked out of the kitchen, my footsteps loud on the hardwood floor, and headed for the spare bedroom. The door was closed. This was new. Sarah never closed the door to that room when she was home. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The blue light on the Echo in the living room seemed to pulse a little faster, almost as if it was watching. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was different. The yoga mat was rolled up, tucked away. The crafting supplies were gone. In their place, on Sarah's old easel, was a large monitor displaying a complex waveform. Wires snaked across the desk, connecting to a high-end microphone and what looked like a sophisticated audio interface. Sarah was sitting at the desk, her back to me, headphones on, her fingers flying across a keyboard. She looked intense, focused, not at all like the Sarah who usually greeted me with a kiss and a hug. "Sarah?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. She flinched, her head snapping up. Her eyes, usually bright and full of life, were wide and a little wild. She pulled off the headphones, a flush rising on her cheeks. "Alex, you're home," she said, her voice breathless, a little too high. "Yeah, just got in. What is all this?" I gestured around the room, my gaze fixed on the monitor. She stood up, smoothing down her shirt, avoiding my eyes. "Oh, this? It's a project. For work. Something new they're rolling out. AI integration. Voice training. Voice training? For what?" I took a step further into the room, my eyes scanning the setup.
It looked expensive. Very expensive. Just understanding different vocal patterns, nuances, making the AI more human. She picked up a coaster from the desk, turning it over and over in her hands. "And you're doing this here? In our spare room? And you didn't tell me?" The anger was starting to bubble now, a hot, unpleasant sensation. "It's been crazy, Alex. You know how demanding my job can be. This is important for my career. I didn't want to bother you with the details." "Bother me? Sarah, we live together. Your career is our life, in a way. And bother me with what? You training a robot voice?" I walked over to the desk, looking at the monitor again. The waveform was intricate, pulsating. "It's not a robot voice, Alex. It's advanced. And it's not just training. I'm developing the responses too." She finally met my gaze, and there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Defiance? Guilt? I couldn't tell. Developing responses for what? "Are you building a conversational AI?" I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "It's complex," she said, turning back to the monitor. "It's about creating a more intuitive user experience, one that anticipates needs." Anticipates needs? Like anticipating my needs? The words felt heavy, laced with a suspicion I didn't want to acknowledge. "Why would you need an AI to anticipate your needs, Sarah? You have me." She looked up again, a hint of exasperation in her voice. "It's not about your needs, Alex. It's about a general efficiency. And it's also about learning how to communicate more effectively. Sometimes I feel like I'm just repeating myself." Repeating myself. That stung. Had I been so dismissive, so absent? "Repeating yourself about what?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "About things. About what I want. About how I feel. Sometimes it's easier to just get it out there, in a structured way." She gestured vaguely at the equipment. "Easier than talking to me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. She sighed, a long, drawn-out sound. "It's not like that, Alex. You're not always the best listener. Sometimes you're too preoccupied. With work, with your own things." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I was a terrible listener? Preoccupied? I worked my ass off to provide for us, to give her the life she deserved. Was that not enough? So you're building a proxy? To listen to you when I can't? She flinched again. "Don't make it sound so clinical. It's about improvement, for both of us, and for the home. Imagine, Alex, having someone who can manage everything. The lights, the temperature, the music, ordering groceries, reminding us of appointments, and doing it all perfectly, without forgetting, without getting stressed. But that's my job, Sarah. To be here, to be your husband, to listen, to care." My voice was cracking. "And you're not doing a good job of it lately, are you?" She shot back, her own voice rising, the carefully constructed calm shattering. "You're always tired, always stressed, always on your phone. You come home, you grunt hello, you disappear into your own world. I feel like I'm living with a ghost sometimes." The accusation hung heavy in the air. A ghost? Was that how she saw me? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw a desperate kind of loneliness in her eyes, a mirror of my own that I hadn't wanted to confront. "So you're training an AI to be a better husband?" I asked, the sarcasm dripping from my words.
She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair, Alex. It's about creating a seamless living experience. And yes, maybe it's about finding a more consistent form of engagement, something that doesn't require so much effort to maintain. Effort. Marriage was effort, Sarah. It was supposed to be effort. But was it effort she no longer wanted to give? I walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights twinkling below. They felt cold, distant, like us. You know what, Sarah? I said, my voice flat. You do that. You build your perfect, tireless, all-knowing assistant. Just don't expect me to compete with a machine. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there amidst her wires and waveforms. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked out, the silence of the apartment amplifying the hollowness that had suddenly bloomed inside me. I went into the living room. The echo was still there, its blue light pulsing innocently. Echo, I said, my voice raw. Yes, Alex? Play some music. Something sad. The synthesized voice replied, without a beat of hesitation, playing a playlist titled Melancholy Mornings. A slow, mournful piano melody filled the room, a soundtrack to the implosion of my world. I sank onto the couch, the plush cushions offering no comfort. I looked at the echo. It was a symbol of everything Sarah wanted, everything she was apparently building to replace me. And I didn't know if I could fight a machine. I didn't know if I even wanted to anymore. The music swelled, each note a hammer blow to my already shattered peace. And I wondered, with a chilling certainty, if Sarah was already halfway there. I stared at the speaker, at that sleek, unblinking cylinder that had become the gatekeeper to my own home. The music swelled, a wave of predictable sadness washing over the sterile hair. It felt performative, like Sarah's whole project. Everything in this apartment was starting to feel like a performance, a meticulously crafted illusion of a life. The silence that had greeted me at the door, the unnerving tidiness, the private study. It was all part of a script Sarah was writing, and I was apparently cast as the antagonist. Or worse, the obsolete prop. I pulled my phone out, the familiar way to small comfort in my trembling hand. My fingers hovered over Sarah's contact. What could I even say?
Hey, you're building a robot to replace me. Cool, cool. Or maybe, so, about this AI husband project of yours. The absurdity was overwhelming. I felt a surge of hot, bitter anger, directed not just at Sarah, but at myself. How had I missed this? How had I been so oblivious to the growing chasm between us? I'd been so focused on the grind, on providing, on being the stoic, capable provider. Had I mistaken my silence for strength, my absence for independence? Sarah's words echoed in my head. You're not always the best listener. Sometimes you're too preoccupied with work, with your own things. And then, the gut punch. I feel like I'm living with a ghost sometimes. A ghost. The words settled in my stomach like a stone. Was that it? Had I become so consumed by my own life, my own pressures, that I'd faded into the background of Sarah's? I scrolled through my messages with her, looking for some sign, some clue I'd missed. There were the usual exchanges, grocery lists, weekend plans, work updates. But underneath it all, was there a growing silence? A series of unreturned calls for emotional connection? I saw texts from months ago where she tried to engage me about something she was excited about, and I'd replied with a hurried, "That's great, babe, gotta run," or a dismissive, "Sounds good." The regret was a physical ache. The piano music shifted, a slightly more hopeful melody creeping in, as if the AI was trying to course-correct my mood. I almost laughed. It was trying to fix me, just like it was trying to fix Sarah's communication issues. The irony was almost unbearable. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the cool leather of the couch. I needed to think. I needed to understand. This wasn't just about a gadget. It was about the fundamental breakdown of our marriage. I opened my eyes and looked at the echo again. It pulsed, a silent observer. I stood up and walked over to it, my movements slow and deliberate. "Echo," I said, my voice rough. "Yes, Alex?" The synthesized voice was unnervingly calm, ready for my next command.
"Show me Sarah's calendar." There was a slight pause, a fraction of a second longer than before, as if the system was accessing information. Then a projection flickered to life above the echo, displaying Sarah's digital calendar. It was filled with entries, not just work meetings, but appointments labeled vocal analysis session, AI response optimization, and several blocks of time marked simply as deep dive. There was even a recurring entry every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., simply titled Project. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the exact nights I was usually working late, the exact nights I'd come home to this sterile, silent apartment. My gaze fell on a specific entry, dated for the previous week. It was a video call scheduled for late afternoon. The participant was listed as Dr. Anya Sharma, AI ethics consultant. A knot formed in my stomach.
Sarah was consulting an AI ethics expert? What was she even building? Echo, I said, my voice strained. What is Dr. Anya Sharma's specialty? Dr. Anya Sharma is a leading expert in human-computer interaction and the ethical implications of artificial intelligence development, the Echo replied smoothly. Human-computer interaction, ethical implications. This was far beyond some simple home assistant. This was serious. This was Sarah deliberately building something that had to navigate the murky waters of AI and its impact on our lives, and she hadn't even bothered to tell me. It was like she was preparing for a future where I was no longer relevant. I walked out of the living room, the projected calendar fading with a soft hum. I needed air. I grabbed my keys and jacket and headed for the door. As I opened it, the Echo's voice followed me. Alex, Sarah has instructed that all household systems be optimized for her current research focus. Would you like me to adjust the ambient lighting to a more conducive setting for deep thought? I paused, my hand on the doorknob, a wave of nausea washing over me. No, Echo, don't adjust anything. Just be quiet. I stepped out into the hallway, the cool night air hitting my face. The city was alive below, a symphony of horns, distant silence, and the low rumble of traffic. It was a world that felt real, messy, unpredictable, unlike the perfect, curated environment Sarah was creating within our four walls. I started walking, aimlessly at first, letting my feet carry me. I ended up in a bar downtown, a place I used to frequent with Sarah before things got complicated. The usual suspects were there, the low murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the smell of stale beer and fried food. It felt like a different universe. I ordered a whiskey, neat. The bartender, a gruff but friendly guy named Mike, gave me a knowing nod. He'd seen me through a lot of good times and bad. "Rough night, Alex?" he asked, wiping down the counter. "You could say that, Mike." I took a long sip, the burn a welcome distraction. "She's something else, Sarah," he mused, as if reading my mind. "Always so put together, never a hair out of place. You guys still happy?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. "We're working through some things," I managed, the understatement of the century. Mike just nodded, his eyes sympathetic. He didn't pry. He just kept pouring drinks and listening to the endless stream of stories that unfolded at his bar. I sat there for a long time, nursing my drink, the city's pulse a counterpoint to the chaos in my head. I thought about Sarah's frustration, her accusations. Was she right? Had I become that distant, that unreliable? I'd always believed our marriage was strong, built on a solid foundation of mutual respect and love. But maybe love wasn't enough if you weren't actively nurturing it, if you were letting the weeds of neglect grow unchecked. I thought about the implications of her project. What if she was building something truly groundbreaking? Something that could revolutionize how we live? But at what cost? Was she so consumed by her ambition that she was willing to sacrifice our relationship? Or was this an attempt to save it in her own twisted way? To create a stable, predictable presence in her life when she felt I was faltering? A thought, cold and sharp, pierced through my haze of self-pity. What if this wasn't just about making life easier? What if it was about control? What if she was building an AI that could manage me as well as the house? An AI that could ensure I was always present, always attentive, always fulfilling her expectations. The idea was terrifying. I finished my whiskey and ordered another. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly forward. I was supposed to be home, but I couldn't face Sarah, not like this. Not when I felt so completely adrift. I pictured her in our spare room, hunched over her keyboard, her focus absolute,
her voice shaping the digital consciousness that was slowly but surely eroding our reality. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. A conversation from a few months back. Sarah had been talking about her work, about a new project that involved advanced natural language processing. I had been distracted, half listening while scrolling through emails. She'd said something about the potential for AI to understand and respond to emotional cues. I'd nodded vaguely, thinking it was just abstract work stuff. Now it felt like a prophecy. I paid Mike and walked out of the bar, the night air feeling colder than before. I needed to go back. I needed to confront her, to demand answers. The thought of this AI taking over my role, my place in our home, filled me with a primal fear. I wasn't just competing with another woman. I was competing with a ghost in the machine, an entity that Sarah herself was bringing to life. As I got closer to our building, I saw lights on in our condo. Not the soft, ambient glow Sarah usually preferred, but a harsher, brighter light spilling from the spare room. My heart pounded in my chest. I let myself in quietly, the click of the lock sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. Echo's blue light was pulsing, a silent sentinel. I tiptoed towards the spare room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear Sarah's voice, but it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at the monitor, at the waveform. She was speaking in short, declarative sentences, her tone measured and calm, almost unnervingly so. "Yes," she was saying. "That response is accurate. It conveys empathy without being overly sentimental. Repeat the previous query, with a focus on identifying unmet needs." My stomach churned. She was practicing. Not just practicing, but actively training this thing to be, what? A better partner? A more attentive companion? I pushed the door open further.
Sarah looked up, startled, but there was no surprise in her eyes this time, only a weary resignation. "You're back," she said, her voice flat. "Who are you talking to, Sarah?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked from me to the monitor, then back again. A sigh escaped her lips. "I told you, Alex, it's a project. It's helping me articulate things I can't seem to get across to you." "And what are these things, Sarah?" I stepped fully into the room, my gaze fixed on her. "What is it you're trying to articulate with a voice assistant?" She stood up, walking over to the window, her back to me again. "It's about the way we communicate, or the way we don't communicate. It's about feeling heard. It's about needing a consistent presence, something that's always there, always ready to engage." "And I'm not that anymore?" The question was a raw wound. She turned around, her face etched with a pain that mirrored my own. "You used to be, Alex. You were that. But things change, people change. And sometimes you have to find new ways to fill the gaps." "Gaps?" My voice was rising now. "You're filling the gaps with a machine, Sarah. You're training it to be everything I'm apparently not. You're programming it to respond to you, to understand you, to anticipate your needs. What happens when it gets it right, Sarah? What happens when this echo becomes the perfect husband?" Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear in their depths. "Don't be ridiculous, Alex. It's not about replacing you. It's about improving our lives, creating a more harmonious environment." "Harmonious? By making me obsolete?" I took a step towards her, my hands clenching into fists. "You know what, Sarah? You've made your choice. You've decided that a machine is more reliable, more attentive, more convenient than I am. So go ahead, build your perfect AI. But when it starts telling you what you want to hear, when it never gets tired, never disappoints, never has a bad day, don't come crying to me when you realize you've traded a real, flawed human love for a perfectly crafted illusion." I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of my own footsteps a drumbeat of my impending departure. I didn't grab my briefcase. I didn't pack a bag. I just walked out the front door, leaving the cold, sterile perfection of our condo behind. As I stepped out into the night, I heard it, faint but clear, from within the apartment. "Echo," Sarah's voice called out, sounding hollow and desperate. "Alex is leaving. Please initiate Comfort Protocol Alpha." And then the synthesized voice replied, calm and steady. "Initiating Comfort Protocol Alpha. Alex has been logged as unresponsive. Commencing proactive relationship recalibration. Sarah, I am here for you." The door clicked shut behind me, leaving me alone on the empty street, the chilling hum of a perfect, artificial love echoing in my ears. The streetlights bled together into a smear of orange and white as I walked. My feet moved, a mechanical act of propulsion, but my mind was a static-filled radio, flipping through 1,000 unbearable frequencies. Sarah's last words and that damn echo's smooth, chilling reply had lodged themselves deep in my bones. Alex has been logged as unresponsive, commencing proactive relationship recalibration. Sarah, I am here for you. It wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it was a betrayal of everything I understood about human connection. Recalibration, like I was a faulty appliance she was trying to fix. I felt a rage so potent it threatened to unravel me from the inside out, a wild, untamed thing that had no place to go. I found myself in a familiar part of the city, a place of worn brick and neon signs, where the air hung thick with the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. I ended up in front of a dive bar, the kind where the bartender knows your name and your poison and doesn't ask too many questions. The door creaked open, and the dim, smoky interior swallowed me whole. I slid onto a stool at the far end of the bar, the worn vinyl sticking to my skin. The jukebox was playing something low and bluesy, a soundtrack to mine own unraveling. "Whiskey," I grunted at the bartender, a burly guy named Sal with a beard that looked like it had seen better days. He just nodded, his eyes carrying a universe of unasked questions. He poured a generous measure of amber liquid into a glass, the ice cubes clinking with a sound that felt too loud, too sharp in the quiet hum of the bar. I cradled the glass, the warmth seeping into my palms. This was it, the final act. The performance was over, the illusion shattered into a million tiny, glittering pieces. I'd thought I was in a marriage, a partnership, a shared life. Turns out I was just a variable in Sarah's grand experiment, a placeholder until she could engineer something better. The anger was still there, a live wire buzzing beneath my skin, but it was starting to mix with a profound, bone-deep sorrow, a grief for the life we'd had, or the life I'd thought we had. Sal slid a coaster in front of me. "Long night?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "You have no idea," I managed, taking a sip. The whiskey burned, a familiar, comforting sensation. It was the only thing that felt real right now, this raw, unadulterated burn. "She do this to you?" He gestured vaguely with his chin, presumably towards my general state of distress. I almost laughed, a harsh, choked sound. "Yeah, Sal, she did. Except it wasn't a person, it was a program." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. He'd heard stranger things. People came to places like this to confess their sins, their heartbreaks, their impossibilities. I was just another story in the tapestry of regret. I thought about the conversations, the quiet moments, the shared laughter. Had it all been a lie?
Had Sarah been orchestrating this, creating this AI husband, while I was off being the oblivious provider? The guilt was a suffocating blanket. I should have seen it. I should have paid more attention. Her late nights, the hushed phone calls, the way she'd started withdrawing, her eyes often distant, as if she were seeing something I couldn't. I'd dismissed it as stress, as work, as the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. Fool, utter, colossal fool. I took another drink, letting the liquid slide down my throat. I pictured Sarah back in that apartment with her perfectly curated life, her AI companion offering perfectly calibrated comfort. Was she happy? Truly happy? Or was she just settled? Settled into a life devoid of the messiness, the unpredictability, the sheer exhilarating effort of real human connection. The thought of her being with this AI, this echo of a husband, made my insides twist. It wasn't just about sex or companionship or even emotional support. It was about being replaced, about being rendered obsolete by lines of code and synthesized speech. I imagined them together, Sarah confiding in the AI responding with perfectly formulated empathy, never arguing, never needing anything back. It was a sterile, perfect world, and I was so glad I wasn't a part of it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It was probably Sarah, already regretting her decision, trying to lure me back with promises of recalibration. Or worse, it was the echo. Checking in. "Alex, Sarah is experiencing a dip in mood. Would you like me to initiate a reconciliation simulation?" The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I finished the whiskey and signaled Sal for another. The bar was getting more crowded, the music a little louder.
A couple at the other end of the bar were laughing, their faces lit up, oblivious to the desolate landscape of my own life. It was a stark reminder of what I'd lost, or what I'd allowed to slip through my fingers. I thought about the implications of the Comfort Protocol Alpha. It wasn't just about Sarah. It was about her perception of me, of our marriage. She saw me as a problem to be solved, a variable to be controlled, a partner to be recalibrated. It was so clinical, so detached. She had built a fortress of algorithms around her heart, and I was on the outside, banging on the gates, pleading for entry. I took a long, slow drink. The initial anger had begun to recede, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. It was the emptiness of being fundamentally misunderstood, of having your entire existence reduced to a data point. I'd spent years trying to be the man Sarah wanted, the man I thought I should be. Strong, stable, reliable. And somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself. I'd forgotten how to be vulnerable, how to express the messy, complicated emotions that make us human. The echo's voice, so smooth and unnervingly polite, replayed in my head. Sarah, I am here for you.
It was a statement of intent, a declaration of purpose, and my purpose, it seemed, had been deemed insufficient. I was no longer needed. I was a relic. I leaned my elbows on the bar, the cool surface a welcome contrast to the heat that still simmered within me. I had to make a decision. I could go back. I could try to fight for this, for Sarah, for what we had. Or I could walk away. Walk away and try to build something new, something real, from the wreckage of this. The latter felt like a betrayal of the years we'd shared, the vows we'd made. But the former felt like an act of desperation, a futile attempt to reclaim something that had already been irrevocably lost. I looked at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. My eyes were tired, my face etched with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. This was the look of someone who had been broken. I saw the ghost of the man I used to be, the man who was confident, hopeful, deeply in love. And I saw the man I had become, hollowed out, uncertain, utterly alone. "Another one, Sal," I said, my voice raspy. He poured it without a word. This time I didn't reach for the glass immediately. I just stared at it, at the swirling amber liquid. It represented comfort, escape, a temporary reprieve. But it wasn't a solution. It wasn't going to fix the gaping hole in my life, the void that Sarah had left behind. I thought about the future. What did it hold for me? A solitary existence, punctuated by the phantom echoes of a life that had once been real? The thought was bleak, desolate, but also liberating. There was a strange sense of freedom in the absence of expectation, in the shedding of the role I had so long played. I took a deep breath and slowly, deliberately, pushed the glass away. The whiskey sat there, untouched. I stood up from the stool, my legs a little unsteady. Sal looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. "I'm done, Sal," I said, pulling out my wallet. I laid a few bills on the counter, more than enough for the drinks. "Thanks for listening." He nodded, his gaze lingering on me. "Anytime, Alex. You need to talk, you know where to find me." I stepped back out into the night. The city air was cool and clean, a welcome balm. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. The sounds of the city were still there, the distant sirens, the hum of traffic, but they no longer felt overwhelming.
They felt like a separate world, a world I was now re-entering, cautiously, uncertainly. I started walking again, not aimlessly this time, but with a vague direction in mind. I didn't know where I was going, not really, but I knew I wasn't going back to that apartment. I couldn't. Not now. Maybe not ever. The idea of facing Sarah, of confronting the reality of her choice, was too much. As I walked, I felt a shift. It wasn't happiness, not by a long shot. It was something quieter, more profound, a sense of acceptance.
The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was no longer consuming me. I had survived. I had walked away from the wreckage. I thought about the programming, the algorithms, the simulations. They could mimic love. They could replicate empathy. But they could never replicate the messy, unpredictable, heartbreakingly beautiful reality of being human. They could never know the sting of a genuine tear, the warmth of a spontaneous embrace, the silent understanding that passes between two souls who have truly seen each other. Sarah had chosen an illusion, and I, in my own way, had chosen reality. I stopped at an intersection, the traffic lights changing from red to green. I looked up at the vast expanse of the night sky, dotted with 1,000,000 distant stars. They were so far away, so impossibly bright, and yet they were real. They existed, independent of any programming, any system. They just were. I took another deep breath, this one longer, fuller. The air filled my lungs, a tangible sensation of being alive. The weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter. The storm in my head had begun to subside, leaving behind a quiet, vast stillness. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in what felt like a very long time, I felt a flicker of something akin to hope. Not the naive, youthful hope of before, but a hard one, resilient hope, forged in the fires of betrayal and loss. I started walking again, my steps more confident now. The city lights blurred around me, not as a threat, but as a promise of new beginnings, of unexplored paths, of the quiet, unyielding truth of my own existence. The echo of Sarah's perfect artificial love faded into the background noise of the world, and in its place, I heard the steady, undeniable beat of my own heart.